Trapped in a kill zone, outnumbered 5-1, the SEALs were seconds away from annihilation. Gunfire rained from every ridge, ammunition nearly gone, death closing in. Then, one shot cracked through the chaos, followed by another, each enemy silenced with impossible precision. A hidden sniper had entered the fight, turning certain defeat into a legend whispered in every unit since. Every trigger pull tore apart the ambush, every echo carried the weight of a ghost watching over them. Who was Specter One, Katria Voss, and how did she know every move before it happened? What truth hides in the Valley Command refused to acknowledge, truth sealed away but never forgotten. This is VeteranBiker. Comment 1 if you're new, 2 if you've been with us, 3 if you ride with us every week. Like, subscribe, and stay to the end. The ravine did not look like death at first glance. It was a dry cut of stone and wind in the Caucasus, a narrow gash between pale limestone walls where scrub pines clung to ledges and a sun like hammered brass burned every shadow thin. Lieutenant Commander Daniel Hawk Mercer read the terrain the way other men read maps, angles, approaches, blind corners, but the mountains had hidden their teeth well. One step too far into the throat of the valley and the world detonated. Muzzle flashes spat from 3 tiers of rock. Tracers stitched the air with furious orange. A heavy weapon on the eastern lip turned the gravel around the team into boiling dust. Mercer threw his shoulder into a shale outcrop and felt chips rake his cheek like sleet. Radios flared with overlapping calls, each voice pinched and exact in the way of people who had trained too long to panic now. Contact front. Fire from high right. Machine gun on the saddle. He heard the rip of rounds chewing the ridge where Petty Officer Clay had been a heartbeat earlier, and swore into the grit. The team had stepped into a designed kill zone. Whoever set this place had walked it as carefully as he did. Measured distances, placed fire sacks, thought through what a disciplined unit would do when pincered. He saw it in the angles, a crossfire tight enough to lock them down, fields of fire that punished movement, the east gun driving them into the scope of a sniper on the western shoulder. Intelligence had promised wilderness, no organized force, maybe a den of smugglers with old rifles and braver stories than skills. Instead, they were looking at a practiced, well-equipped enemy who knew comms, used hand signals, and moved like they had rehearsed this a dozen times before dawn. Smoke, north wall, Mercer snapped, and grenades coughed white screens that boiled and drifted into the throat of the ravine. For a few seconds the dust and smoke conspired, and shapes that wanted to kill them lost their clean sightlines. It wasn't relief, just a pause in a storm. His left side went numb as a fragment kissed the plate carrier and bit into the strap. He checked the bleeding without looking, wetness yes but shallow, and pushed the thought aside. He needed his eyes. Around him the squad dug into whatever rock would take their weight, boots jammed under shelves of stone, elbows locked, cheeks settled to stocks. The air vibrated with the metallic scream of ricochets. "Bravo, actual, this is Harrison. East gun still up. They're walking it toward our center. Recommend we take the notch up 2 levels and flank the position." "Negative," Mercer said. "That notch is covered. You'll get eaten halfway." Angela Reed, their designated marksman, was 25 meters to his left, tucked behind a natural buttress that looked carved for her rifle. "I count multiple teams rotating on the platforms," she said, breath steady. "Thermals are live. They've got glass on us we didn't see on approach." "Copy," Mercer replied. He clicked through the net to command. "Mountain control, Bravo actual. Ambushed in a complex crossfire, multiple elevated positions, request immediate air. Any birds on the board?" The answer was a silence long enough to feel. When it came, it tasted like a verdict. Negative immediate support, terrain and distance, earliest assistance 70. Can you maintain? He looked down the line and saw answers in torn sleeves and the barren pouches where spare magazines should be. 70 was a lifetime he did not own. We'll hold as long as we can, he said, and signed off. The heavy gun swiveled and found a new rhythm, short, disciplined bursts instead of wild spray. Whoever ran it knew doctrine. That meant they would pace themselves, keep barrels cool, and clamp the team down until smaller units slipped forward under the umbrella to finish the work up close. The thought had weight. Shift your angles 5 degrees left, Mercer told them. Don't get greedy. Count shots. Make everyone a decision. He leaned out between two teeth of rock for a glance. Too long, and the western ridge slapped at him, splinters exploding where his head had been. The impact rattled his teeth and powdered his tongue with limestone. He blinked dust tears, and the world snapped hard and small again. That was when the voice came on the net, clean as a raindrop in static. Bravo, drop your profile 2 inches and hold what you've got. Mercer felt every muscle tighten. Unknown on their encrypted channel was not a thing that happened by accident. Identify, he said, level, while his palm slid to adjust his push to talk. State call sign and authority. Identification is not your most urgent problem, the voice said, almost conversational, as if pointing out a loose strap before a jump. 2 shooters on the western shelf, 10 meters apart. The second position is your more immediate threat. She has the angle to rake 3 of you if you pop at the wrong moment. Do not lean again. Identify, Mercer repeated, or get off my net. A single rifle crack cut the ravine like a whip. It did not sound like the rest, and he could not have explained why. Some shots are a cough of powder and barrel. This one was a statement, deep and certain. Across the way, a muzzle flash on the western shelf winked out like a signal lamp dying. A second shot followed, another glitter of stone where a man had been. Then quiet except for the echo rolling and breaking along the walls. Whoever you are, Mercer said, keep talking. Specter One, the voice replied. Maintain positions, work with me. If you do not move, I will make movement for them the problem. Mercer looked to Reed. Even through smoke, her eye behind the scope said what he needed. The shots weren't luck. Angles match, she murmured. I can't see her. Elevation is high. Sound rolls off at different lengths. She's above our eyes. Specter One, Mercer said, tasting the name. How are you on this net? Later, the stranger said, You're in a funnel designed to consume you. They have the east gun to pin, west shelf to scythe, northern ledges to cut your rear if you break. You need to collapse your footprint and stack your fields. Clay, you're too far out. Back 2 body lengths. Davis, rotate 10 degrees and forget the rock with the diagonal vein. Nobody's shooting from there yet and you're wasting glass. She hadn't used call signs pulled from thin air. She had called 2 men by name. Mercer's jaw worked. The second part widened his world. He wasn't hearing a guesser. He was listening to someone who had eyes on each of them, who read their positions like a diagram. If it was an enemy lure, it was the most elaborate he had ever heard, and it made no sense to save their lives beautifully before slipping a knife in later. East gun, Specter One said, as if remembering something polite she had meant to mention. The third shot landed somewhere he could not see, and the angry plow of the heavy weapon faltered, then fell silent. The relief made Mercer's shoulders feel like someone else's. Shifting fire, Reed said, and took the moment to remove a shape moving behind a rock slit. Her rifle spoke once, and there was no second movement. They did not cheer. They breathed. Mercer counted 16 heartbeats and spoke. We're short on ammunition, he said. If you're going to preach patience, give me reason to sell it. "They're professionals," Specter One said, "but their plan lives or dies on tempo. They thought you'd push the notch. You didn't. That bought me 30 seconds to take the scythe away. Now they need to improvise, and improvisation leaks discipline. Listen." They listened. Under the rags of gunfire and the grind of stone, new sounds arrived, hurried feet scrambling for a different lane, someone on the far shelf barking orders with the brittle edge of a plan already slipping, the staccato of a weapon cycling too fast, nerves chewing through rounds. Mercer had taught young operators to hear like this, to separate noise from meaning. Hearing it reflected back to him from an unseen partner felt like finding a mirror in smoke. "Bravo 2, Mercer said softly. "Keep your angles. Don't chase. Let them think we're blind and locked. We're not blind." "Copy," Harrison breathed. Mercer pinned the concrete of the moment under his boot. He could push, risk a break that might win them air, but a push into an enemy plan that still had teeth was vanity. He shut that door. "Specter One," he said, "you've got us covered left and high." "For now," the voice replied. "Your right is less certain. Then the right is what I'll worry about." On the right, the terrain folded in on itself, a ribcage of stone with gullies running up like veins. If he were the opposition, he would send 2 fire teams up those gullies low and fast, then have them bloom out near their line and rake the corridor from bad breath distance. He pictured it, saw the places he would try to use, and set his people to ruin the idea. "Clay, cut to that broken fin and set a short ambush. Don't show your muzzle. You fire, you move. Notch back to me in 3. He looked to the far slab where Davis lay wedged behind a chunk of weathered shale. "Davis, your lane overlaps Clay's by a handspan. Don't step on him." A shape darted where the right gully kinked. Davis sent a tight pair, then clicked to conserve. The shape did not dart again. "2 shooters just below your right gully," Specter One said, confirming the phantom he suspected but could not see through the smoke. "One of them holds a radio. He's telling himself a story about courage. End that story." Reed took the invitation. Her rifle thundered once more, and the radio went quiet. "Who are you?" Reed asked, not loud, not trying to command the net. There was no answer at first. Instead, another shot elsewhere. A different threat folded. Mercer did not ask again. Names satisfied curiosity. They did nothing for survival. "You see any ladder up to our rear?" he asked instead. "Negative," Specter One said. "Not yet. They may try laterals and then up and over. They want to close. They're angry I changed their music. Anger makes people brave in stupid ways. They're not the only ones short on patience," Harrison muttered. "Patience is a weapon," Specter One said, and the way she said it made Mercer think she wasn't repeating a slogan. She was reciting something she had paid for. The fire eased to stutters. The enemy had lost the drumbeat that made their plan sing. When it recovered, it did so in smaller pockets, a test here, a jab there. Mercer's team answered without waste. They had learned not to chase ghosts down alleys long ago. They let the mountains bring their hunters in close, then cut their ankles. The ravine had grown quieter, though quiet was a lie. It was the strained pause of men holding their breath, the kind of silence that waited to explode. Mercer crouched lower against the limestone teeth and felt the weight of his radio pressing into his chest plate. Above the net's faint hiss, that same calm female voice returned, guiding with the authority of someone who knew both the enemy and Bravo better than they knew themselves. "Shift weight north," Katria Voss instructed. "She never used maybe. Never used, I think." Her words came clipped, precise, one shooter trying to edge forward through the northern scrub. "He's belly crawling with a suppressed weapon. Don't let him make the ridge." Reed pivoted her scope, exhaled, and fired. A shape jolted mid-crawl, then lay still. Dust rolled around him like smoke. Reed murmured into the net, confirmed. "Good," Katria said. "Hold discipline. You break pattern, you die." Mercer almost smiled despite the grit in his mouth. Whoever she was, she had the kind of certainty that could stitch a wounded team back together. He felt his men lean into her voice like it was body armor they hadn't been issued. The enemy wasn't idle. Shouts rang from the western shoulder, curt and sharp in a language Mercer didn't need to understand. Boots scrambled against Cree, rifles barked in staccato bursts meant to pin rather than kill. They were testing Bravo's edges again, waiting for a mistake. Mercer had taught ambush drills, had run them through 100 variations, but here, in the throat of this valley, he was facing an opponent who had done the same, and with superior numbers. The only variable they hadn't accounted for was the phantom above, Katria Voss. Her rifle cracked again, single and deliberate. The sound carried a weight that made Mercer's skin prickle. She wasn't chasing kills, she was cutting threads, unraveling the enemy's design shot by shot. "Bravo actual," Harrison said from the flank, voice taut. "They're pushing pressure back to the east lip. If that gun comes up again—" "It won't," Katria interrupted. "The crew is broken. Their replacement is still fumbling belts. You have 30 seconds before they recover. Use it." Mercer seized the window. Clay advanced 3 meters to the wedge. Reed, adjust 2 degrees right, cover his push. Everyone else, lock lanes, move. Clay darted from one slab to another, gravel spilling under his boots, and dropped flat against cover. Reed's scope snapped to protect him, and Katria's rifle spoke again from above, erasing a shadow that had lifted its weapon toward Clay's back. Clay keyed the net, breath ragged. "Still here." "Stay that way," Mercer muttered. The enemy shifted tempo once more. Bursts of gunfire rattled in erratic rhythm, like a drummer losing the beat. Mercer recognized it, frustration leaking discipline. Katria had been right. Their plan depended on tempo, and now tempo was bleeding away. "Bravo, listen," she said, her tone edged with steel. 2 fire teams trying to wrap from your rear north gully. If they crest that lip, you'll be pinched in half. Davis, you own that approach. Clay, overlap him by half a body. Don't argue. Neither man did. They adjusted silently, rifles angling like compass needles, snapping to true north. Moments later, shadows appeared at the ridge. Davis fired tight, 3 controlled shots. Clay added his rhythm, and the attempt dissolved into screams and sliding rock. Mercer exhaled slowly. He didn't know this woman, didn't know how she had their names, but every order matched reality as if she could see through stone. It was eerie, uncanny, yet undeniable. For minutes that felt like hours, the valley became a cruel metronome. Enemy pushes surged, collapsed, then rose again, each time met by Bravo's discipline and Katria's scalpel fire. The SEALs were running low, magazines light, grenades scarce, but they were no longer prey. They were something harder, sharper, welded into the terrain. Between bursts, Mercer found himself wondering, who was she? Not just a sniper. No one hit like that without years in the shadows. Not just someone with glass. She knew doctrine, knew ambush theory, knew how SEALs thought. She was one of them, or had been. But why here? Why now? He swallowed the questions. Survival mattered more than curiosity. Another burst ripped overhead, chewing sparks from limestone. Reed swore softly. "Boss, they're trying to fix us for mortars." "Negative," Katria said before Mercer could answer. "Too steep for tubes. They'll try grenadiers instead. Watch the arcs." Her prediction proved true within minutes. A grenade arced overhead, clattering against stone. Bravo hit the deck, covering heads as the blast shook dust loose. Shrapnel rattled like hail. Before the enemy could throw a second, Katria's rifle thundered, and the thrower never finished his motion. His body tumbled into the ravine, weapon clattering from nerveless hands. Mercer almost muttered thanks into the net, but caught himself. Gratitude was a luxury they couldn't afford yet. The lull stretched, punctuated by the occasional crack of Reed's rifle or the whispering whip of Katria's. Mercer wiped blood and dust from his face, his knuckles raw. His men glanced to him, waiting. He steadied them with calm orders, but he knew the truth. They were held together as much by the unseen sniper as by him. "Specter One," Mercer said finally, choosing the name she had given. "You've bought us minutes. Can you buy us hours?" Her reply came cool, unhurried. "Hours are expensive, but you'll have enough." There was something in her tone, experience etched into bone, not arrogance. Mercer recognized it. This wasn't her first valley, not her first ambush. She spoke like someone who had survived too many and buried too many after. The enemy regrouped, their voices sharper, more urgent. Reed whispered, "They're stacking again. Looks like they're preparing another push." "Confirmed," Katria said. "They'll try the saddle southwest. Expect 8, maybe more. Hold fire until they commit. Let me thin them first." Mercer keyed the net. "You heard her. Hold discipline. No one shoots until the saddle opens." The weight gnawed at them. Seconds bled into sweat, into cramped muscles, into the taste of grit on teeth. Then figures broke cover, sprinting in pairs across the saddle. Reed exhaled and fired, dropping the rear man. Katria's crack followed, erasing another mid-stride. The survivors faltered, uncertain. Mercer seized the moment. "Controlled bursts now!" Bravo erupted in practiced rhythm. The saddle became a killing ground. Bodies tumbled, weapons clattered, momentum shattered. Survivors skidded behind shallow rocks too thin to save them. "Southwest flank neutralized," Reed reported. "Not yet," Katria corrected. "Sniper above them, overwatch. He's shifting position." Her warning came seconds before a shot sparked inches from Davis's helmet. He rolled, cursed, hugged cover. Reed tried to pin the enemy sniper, but he was quick, changing nests after each shot. Mercer's gut tightened. An enemy marksman with height advantage could bleed them dry. "Reed, suppress," Mercer ordered. "Keep him ducking." Reed fired, adjusted, fired again, never staying long. The duel was dangerous, tense. Then Katria's voice slipped through, calm as a scalpel. Wind cross-cutting north to south, 400 meters. "He thinks he's clever." Her rifle cracked. The ridge went silent. No answering fire. "Correction," Katria said evenly. "He thought he was clever." Even hardened seals felt a ripple at her understatement. She wasn't boasting. She was stating fact, with the cold contempt of a master who had ended an apprentice's game. Mercer leaned heavier against stone, heartbeat thudding. He keyed his net. "Specter One, Katria, you're part of this fight now. You keep seeing, we'll keep holding." "Understood," she replied. The reprieve lasted minutes at most. From the north came guttural shouts, orders carried in clipped syllables. The enemy wasn't done. They were shifting weight, preparing another strike. Bravo adjusted, eyes sharp, rifles ready. Mercer whispered into the net, voice iron. "We're not blind. We're not broken. We hold this line." Above them, unseen, Katria Voss chambered another round. Her breath steadied against the stock. The fight wasn't over, not even close. But for the first time since stepping into the kill zone, Bravo had more than stone and grit on their side. They had her. The valley did not rest. It pulsed with half-seen movement and echoes that bent against the limestone walls. Mercer pressed his cheek tighter to the stone and listened to the ragged silence between bursts of gunfire. His men had steadied, no longer reacting in desperate rhythm, but moving with the precision of operators who knew the fight wasn't theirs alone anymore. They had a phantom, Katria Voss, cutting at the threads of the enemy's design. The enemy, though, was not finished. He could sense it in the cadence of their shouts, in the sudden tightening of fire from the northern shelves. They were recalibrating, trying to rebuild momentum. The first ambush had failed. The saddle charge had bled out. Their sniper had fallen. But they still had numbers, still had weapons, still had the ruthless math of attrition on their side. "Bravo," Mercer murmured, his voice a steel wire stretched across the net. "Check mags. Count your rounds. Don't lie to yourself." Replies came clipped, professional. Half mags, one left, last grenade. No one had to say what it meant. Their resources were finite. The enemies seemed to flow like water. The balance would only hold if discipline outweighed numbers. Then Katria's voice threaded through the static, calm as ever. They're shifting their weight west. 2 squads leapfrogging, their commanders trying to re-establish tempo. He doesn't know he's already lost it. Mercer exhaled. Then we make sure he never finds it again. The western shelf ignited. Rifles barked, echo bouncing until it felt like the cliffs themselves were on fire. Mercer saw shapes bounding between rocks, disciplined in their covering fire. These weren't militia amateurs. They were drilled fighters, moving in bounding overwatch. The kind of enemy that turned kill zones into graveyards. "Reed," Mercer ordered, "strip their cover when they move. Clay, stagger 2 rounds behind. Harrison, protect our flank." Before they could execute, Katria's rifle cracked. One of the bounding figures collapsed mid-stride, momentum snapping. The man behind him hesitated, then dove for cover, breaking the rhythm. "Tempo," Katria said simply. "It's bleeding again." Reed picked up the cue. She snapped her shot into another runner, forcing him face first into the dust. Clay followed, carving the next attempt in half. Each precise trigger pull was like a stitch unraveling the enemy's careful weave. Mercer almost pitied the commander on the far side. Almost. Minutes stretched into a cruel pendulum. Push, falter, regroup. Each time the enemy tried to reassert control, Katria dismantled it with the patience of someone who had lived this dance before. She never wasted a round. Her voice cut through when it mattered. Short commands, exact corrections. "Davis, 3 degrees higher, your target's behind the shale fold. Reed, ignore the decoy. Second shooter has the real glass. Clay, move now. Your cover's about to collapse." She was everywhere and nowhere. Reed tried once more to catch a glimpse through her scope, but the angle revealed nothing, just haze and rock and endless sky. "I still can't see her," Reed muttered. "You won't," Mercer said. He didn't mean it as reassurance, but it came out like faith. The enemy's frustration became visible. They shifted to grenades again, arcing them in clumsy trajectories. Most bounced short or overshot. One landed close, exploding against limestone with a scream of shrapnel. Mercer felt a sting across his forearm and hissed through teeth. Superficial, but a reminder of how thin the margin was. "They'll get desperate now," Katria predicted. "Desperation makes them ugly. Be ready for rushes." "Bravo! Prepare for close fight," Mercer confirmed. He adjusted his rifle, eyes narrowing against the dust. The prediction proved true. Figures broke from cover, sprinting in reckless bursts. Their rifles spat wildfire, tracers raking dust plumes. Bravo answered with surgical control. Reed's rifle snapped. Davis fired disciplined pairs. Clay picked his targets carefully. Each enemy fell before they closed distance. And then Katria spoke again. "Don't relax. Their commander hasn't committed yet. He's testing your edges." As if summoned, a burst of fire scythed across Mercer's position, stone splintering near his head. He ducked lower, jaw set. This wasn't random. The enemy commander was still pulling strings, still trying to break their shape. Mercer wiped blood from a shallow cut and keyed the net. "Specter One, Katria, you see him?" "Not yet," she admitted, "but he'll reveal himself. They always do." When they can't stand watching their plan unravel, they step forward to force it back into shape. That's when he dies. Time bent again, minutes stretching into endless repetition. Push, collapse, silence, push again. Bravo moved like stone and fire, conserving, refusing panic, and every time Mercer thought the weight would finally crush them, Katria's rifle answered. Then came the shift. Reed caught it first. "Boss, they're consolidating lower. Looks like they're aiming for the caves on the western wall." Mercer's stomach tightened. Those limestone cavities were nothing to civilians, but to trained fighters they were perfect nests. Interlocking fields of fire, protected anchors. If the enemy entrenched there, Bravo would be slaughtered. "Specter One?" Mercer asked. "On it," Katria said, her tone flat, decisive. "Don't let them settle. I'll cut their anchors." Her rifle barked. A figure at the cave mouth spun backward, weapon clattering. Reed added a shot, dropping another who tried to crawl inside. Davis clipped a third. Clay peppered the opening with bursts, denying entry. Katria's second shot folded the man carrying the crew-served weapon meant for emplacement. The gun skidded into shadow, useless. The caves were denied, for now. The enemy shifted yet again, like a wounded predator still searching for an opening. Mercer tasted dust and adrenaline, felt exhaustion creep into his men's movements. They were bleeding ammunition, each mag thinner, each trigger pull heavier. Yet somehow, impossibly, they were still holding. He leaned against stone and looked up toward the cliffs. He couldn't see her, not even a glint, but he knew she was there. Katria Voss, the phantom with impossible precision. A woman who knew their names, their angles, their survival better than they did themselves. He keyed the net quietly, only for her. "You're saving us piece by piece." Her reply was simple, stripped of vanity. "I'm doing what has to be done." Another wave came, this one uglier, a ragged attempt at mass. Dozens of figures poured from cover, firing from the hip, voices raw with fury. The valley became thunder, dust exploding under their boots. "Bravo, hold!" Mercer barked. His men stayed disciplined, eyes locked, fingers tight on triggers. The distance closed, 40 meters, 30. "Now!" Bravo erupted. Rifles snapped in controlled bursts, cutting into the charge. Reed's shot scythed precision. Davis dropped a belt carrier first, severing their supply. Clay lobbed his last grenade, blast halting a cluster mid-sprint. The rush faltered, then broke. Survivors scattered, tumbling into rocks, the charge bleeding into ruin. Silence rolled back in, thick and heavy. Mercer's chest heaved, his throat burned. His men glanced at him, eyes wide but steady. Katria's voice slid into the net, calm as ever. That wasn't their last card. "Prepare yourselves. The commander is about to gamble everything." Mercer clenched his jaw. "Then we'll be ready." He swept the valley with his eyes. Bodies littered the floor, smoke coiled in lazy veils, and the limestone walls glared under the pitiless sun. But he knew she was right. The enemy wasn't beaten. Not yet. This was only the middle of the storm. The ravine stank of powder and hot stone. Heat shimmered against the walls, and every breath carried grit deep into Mercer's lungs. He pressed his helmet harder into the rock and felt sweat trickle down his spine. His men were running on instinct now, movements economical, eyes sharp, but exhaustion seeped through the seams. And yet they were alive. Alive in a place designed to bury them. Alive because a hidden rifle had rewritten the script. Katria Voss, Specter One. She hadn't missed once. Her voice had cut through static like steel, guiding, correcting, protecting. She never wasted words, just as she never wasted rounds. Each trigger pull had been exact, dismantling the ambush one thread at a time. Mercer keyed the net. "Specter One, status?" Her reply came smooth, steady. "East shelf is quiet. West is fractured. They're consolidating south, preparing another push. They've lost structure, but desperation can still kill you. Mercer nodded, though she couldn't see it. Copy. Bravo, reset positions. Rotate shooters, breathe. We hold. The lull did not last. Figures moved along the northern ridge, darting in and out of smoke. They weren't coordinated like before. They were angry, raw. Sporadic fire slashed toward Bravo's cover. More noise than precision. It was enough to rattle nerves, to make fingers twitch on triggers. Patience, Katria murmured into their ears. Her tone carried weight, calm but unyielding. Let them spend their courage. Do not chase ghosts. Her words settled like ballast in Mercer's chest. He steadied his breath, gestured for his men to hold. Reed whispered from her perch, target on high rock, moving erratic. Wait, Katria interrupted. Not yours. He's bait. Secondary is 10 meters behind him. Now. Reed adjusted instantly, fired once. The true shooter crumpled. The bait dove uselessly for cover, realizing too late he was expendable. Angles match, Reed confirmed, almost grudging respect in her tone. The enemy regrouped faster this time. They pushed low, sprinting in short bursts toward the ravine floor. Dust clouds rose with every step, masking their numbers. Mercer signaled restraint, waiting until shapes closed the gap. Bravo, on my mark, he said. Katria's voice overlaid his, calm but sharper. Hold one more breath. Let them cross the broken slab. Their cover dies there. The first wave crossed the slab, thinking it protection. Reed and Davis opened fire in unison, bullets sparking stone, cutting men down in heaps. Katria's rifle cracked a heartbeat later, and another figure folded where he thought he was safe. The survivors broke, scattering in confusion. Mercer seized the moment. Short bursts, track lanes, conserve. Bravo executed flawlessly, carving the attempt to ribbons without wasting ammunition. The ravine fell into another uneasy quiet. Mercer reloaded slowly, counting rounds with grim precision. They were running dangerously low. He glanced down the line. Clay was bruised and bleeding, but grinning through grit. Davis's eyes were narrowed slits, rifle steady. Reed adjusted her scope with fingers that never wavered. Mercer keyed the net again. Specter One, how long can you keep this up? As long as needed, Katria replied. Her voice carried no bravado, only fact. But your ammunition is finite. This fight ends when theirs does, or when yours does. We can only control which comes first. Mercer clenched his jaw. He hated the truth, but truth didn't care. The enemy changed tactics again. Shouts rose, guttural and raw, followed by a coordinated surge from the southern slope. Dozens of figures poured into the valley, firing wild but advancing in sheer weight. It wasn't finesse, it was fury. Bravo, hold steady, Mercer barked. Short, controlled bursts. The team answered with practiced precision. Rifles bucked in rhythm, each shot chosen. Men dropped, the rush slowed, but still they came. Harrison shouted, reloading, cover him! Mercer snapped. Reed pivoted instantly, her rifle spitting precise fire that cut the closest threats. Clay lobbed his last grenade. The explosion tore into the rush, buying a heartbeat of stillness. Dust rolled back in choking waves. Then Katria's voice snapped through, sharp as glass. 3 breaking right, near split boulder. They'll flank you in seconds. Davis pivoted without hesitation, squeezing tight bursts that shredded the trio before they could widen the lane. The surge faltered, survivors dropping weapons and scrambling back. The valley floor was littered with bodies, smoke coiling like ghostly veils. For the first time since the ambush began, the enemy broke fully, retreating uphill in disarray. South advance neutralized, Reed reported. Mercer exhaled hard, wiping grime from his face. His chest heaved with exhaustion he couldn't show. He keyed the net. Specter One situation. They're fractured, Katria said. But they won't quit. Their commander is pulling survivors north to regroup. Expect another attempt. Mercer nodded grimly. Then we'll break that one too. The lull after the surge felt unnatural, like the mountain itself was holding its breath. Mercer scanned the cliffs, every nerve tight. His men shifted in place, conserving energy, eyes flicking to him for steadiness. Reed whispered, "Boss, how long can this last?" "Until it ends," Mercer said simply, but inside he knew the truth. Without Katria, it would already be over. Minutes stretched, then Reed caught motion. Drone, small quad coming in high. If the machine survived, concealment was gone. Bravo would be mapped and crushed. Mercer clenched his teeth. Spraying rounds would only expose them further. Before he chose, Katria cut in. "Hold fire! Count to 6, they obeyed. On the 6th beat, her rifle cracked. The drone spun, spiraling into pieces across stone. Silence filled the gap where its buzzing had been. "Problem solved," she said flatly. Even hardened seals felt the weight of that moment. Mercer didn't need thanks. He needed to spend the pause wisely. The enemy, angered by the loss of their eyes, pushed again for position. Figures slipped toward cave mouths in the western wall, trying to establish nests. Reed spotted the gleam of optics. "Don't let them settle," Katria ordered. "I'll dismantle anchors. Deny the rest." Reed fired, cutting down one. Davis took another as he leaned too far. Clay peppered openings with suppressive bursts. Katria's shots folded a crew before they could mount a heavy weapon. Each attempt to root in stone turned into a coffin. But still the pressure mounted. The attackers swarmed like ants, determined to force a foothold. "Boss," Harrison growled, "we can't plug every hole." "You don't need to," Katria replied. "You just need to keep them uncertain." Mercer clenched his jaw. She was right, but their magazines were bleeding dry. Every wasted shot was a gift to the enemy. "Bravo! Fire only on targets you own," Mercer ordered. Nothing speculative. The team obeyed, each shot chosen like a coin spent. The fight around the caves became brutal rhythm. Grenades bounced short, smoke curled into gaps, half-seen shapes darted only to be erased. Reed nailed a sniper leaning too far. Davis dropped a runner with a radio. Clay clipped another scrambling for position. Katria's calm never faltered. Third opening, left shoulder. He's leaning with optics. Take him now. Davis obeyed, his shot erasing the sniper before he could line up. The caves were denied once more, but the enemy commander wasn't finished. He tightened their leash, pulled survivors into line, and prepared another surge. This one was disciplined, textbook, squads bounding, fire overlapping. It was the kind of advance that had crushed men in other valleys. "They'll try to synchronize floor movement with cave fire," Katria predicted. "If they succeed, you'll be pincered. Don't let them." Mercer keyed the net, his voice iron. "We've denied every plan so far. We'll deny this one too." The surge came. The valley roared again, dust and fire shaking stone. Bravo answered with cold precision. Reed staggered her rhythm, breaking formation. Davis targeted leaders, severing coordination. Clay harassed from angles. Katria's shots removed radios and belt carriers, slicing the structure apart. The surge faltered. Coordination bled. Survivors scrambled back into rocks. "Specter One," Mercer muttered. "We can't dance forever." "I know," she said. "I'm taking their conductor." A pause. Then her rifle cracked, decisive. Up the slope, a man mid-command dropped in silence. Coordination collapsed instantly. "They've lost their spine," Reed said quietly. The valley fell into uneasy stillness. Mercer pressed back against the rock, lungs dragging like bellows. He met Harrison's eyes, saw fatigue, grit, and something like awe. 12 men, over 100 enemies, and somehow still breathing. He keyed the net. "Specter One, Katria, you've broken them." Her reply was simple, almost dismissive. Not yet. Desperation makes them reckless. Expect their last card soon. Mercer nodded grimly. The worst was still ahead. But for now, they had survived one more chapter of Sentinel Valley. The valley simmered with silence, the kind that was never safe. Mercer's ears rang with the echo of gunfire that had finally ebbed, but he knew the storm was only coiling tighter. Dust swirled in pale ribbons, smoke clung to shattered rock, and his men crouched lower, conserving what little they had left. Then Reed's whisper slid across the net. Movement, high ridge, west, sniper glass. Mercer's stomach clenched. A new threat, one that could bleed them dry with patient shots. He had trained enough marksmen to know the danger of a sniper with elevation and time. "Specter One?" he asked. Katria Voss's voice came level, without hesitation, confirmed. "Single marksman, 400 meters. He's clever. Shift shoot, never 2 rounds from the same place. He'll try to bleed you until discipline cracks." As if on cue, a shot rang out. The bullet sparked off limestone inches from Davis's helmet. He swore, hugging the rock tighter. "I've got him," Reed said, swinging her scope toward the high ridge. "Negative," Katria interrupted. "Pin him, don't chase. You'll never beat his movement that way. Let me take him." Reed hesitated but obeyed, firing controlled snaps to keep pressure alive. Mercer's pulse hammered. An enemy sniper duel wasn't what they needed with ammo low. He hated the thought of ceding initiative. Then Katria spoke again, voice like stone carved by wind, wind cross-cutting north to south. Distance 400 plus. He thinks he's clever. Her rifle cracked. The sound rolled across the valley, deeper and more final than the rest. Silence followed, broken only by fragments of rock tumbling down the slope. No answering fire. "Correction," she said coolly. He thought he was clever. Even Reed, hard-edged and unflinching, exhaled a low whistle. Mercer felt the weight in her understatement. Katria had not just killed a rival sniper. She had ended a duel before it truly began. The lull was brief. Shouts rose from the north, clipped and sharp, and Mercer knew the enemy was rallying. "They're regrouping," Reed reported, scope flicking, orders going down the line. "Looks like a frontal push." "Confirmed," Katria said. "Bounded advance. Textbook. They'll try to crush you head on." Mercer steadied his voice. "Then we break their book." The surge came like a tide under pressure. Figures advanced in bounds, one group firing, the next moving. Fire overlapped like scales, disciplined, methodical. Dust clouds billowed. "Short burst, break their rhythm," Mercer ordered. "Bravo," answered. Reed staggered her cadence, snapping shots to disrupt cover fire. Davis targeted the men giving signals, cutting coordination at its roots. Clay peppered the slabs where groups clustered, forcing them to scatter. Katria's rifle added punctuation, each crack removing radios, belt carriers, leaders. She wasn't just killing, she was dismantling the skeleton that held the advance together. The enemy's push faltered, cohesion bleeding away. What had begun as a disciplined surge dissolved into scattered shapes hugging stone. "They've lost formation," Reed confirmed. "Not enough," Katria said. "Their commander's still alive. He's the spine. I'll take him." Her rifle thundered again. Up the slope, a man mid-command dropped mid-word. Instantly, the advance collapsed into chaos. "They've lost their spine," Reed echoed softly. But desperation was a predator all its own. Survivors scrambled into caves again, trying to make strong points of the limestone mouths. Grenades bounced short, smoke coiled, and bursts rattled across the ravine. "Deny them," Katria ordered. Her voice stayed cool even as the valley raged. "Don't let them root. Every nest dies before it's born." Bravo executed, thin on ammunition but ruthless in precision. Reed erased one shadow before he could settle his weapon. Davis caught another mid-crawl. Clay sprayed just enough to scare the rest back. Katria removed an entire crew before they could mount a heavy gun. The cave stayed empty, dead mouths in the cliff. Then came the sound Mercer dreaded. The valley floor shook with pounding boots, guttural cries rising in unison. The survivors weren't retreating. They were stacking for a final charge. "Specter One?" Mercer asked. Katria didn't hesitate. "They're gathering everything left. Mass push, no finesse. They'll try to bury you in weight." Mercer keyed his net, voice sharp as steel. "Bravo, you heard it. All out charge. Make every round count. Nothing wasted. Feels like they'd rather die than back off," Clay muttered. "Then make sure they do," Davis replied grimly. The waiting was agony. Then the slope erupted with figures sprinting, screaming, rifles blazing from the hip. Dust billowed, smoke roared. "Hold!" Mercer barked. Bravo held. Hearts hammered, fingers itched, but no one fired early. 30 meters, 25. "Now!" Mercer roared. Bravo erupted in a storm of controlled bursts. The first rank fell, crashing into those behind. Still the wave pressed forward. "Reloading!" Harrison shouted. "Cover him!" Reed pivoted instantly, snapping targets until his mag locked home. Clay hurled his last grenade. The explosion ripped through a cluster, but the survivors vaulted debris, eyes wild. Mercer keyed the net, voice ragged. "Specter One, Katria, you see them?" "Negative," she said. "They're in your dead space. Too close. This fight is yours." The charge slammed within 30 meters. Tracers burned like fireflies through haze. Bravo answered with ferocity sharpened by training and terror. Davis dropped one, pivoted, dropped another. Clay's carbine spat until it clicked empty. He cursed and drew his pistol. Harrison fired until his barrel steamed. Reed picked high-value targets, erasing leaders with cold precision. The ravine became a maelstrom of dust, blood, and steel. Every shot mattered. Every second mattered. Then Katria's voice cracked across the chaos. "Bravo team, drop flat now!" Mercer didn't hesitate. He slammed prone, shouting the order even as he hit the stone. His men mirrored him. 3 rifle cracks echoed from the heights, fast and certain. Each one threaded impossibly close above Bravo's prone forms. Each one struck a charging enemy dead center. The front of the assault collapsed. Momentum behind it shattered. Survivors stumbled, confused, staring at comrades cut down inches from the seals, yet without a single friendly hit. Silence followed, like a tide sucked out. The last attackers froze, then broke, scrambling back uphill. Mercer lifted his head, chest heaving. "Bravo, sound off!" One by one, voices answered. Shaken, scraped, but alive. Everyone. Katria's tone carried rare finality. "Their charge is finished. You've broken them." Mercer leaned against rock, exhaustion threatening to hollow him out. Around him his men slumped, still gripping rifles with white-knuckled discipline. Bodies littered the valley, smoke coiled above scorched stone. The ambush was shattered. He keyed the net. "Specter One, Katria, you've saved us." Her reply was quiet, stripped of pride. "Not saved, delayed. They'll regroup. Expect desperation's last breath." Mercer nodded grimly. The truth was never softer for being spoken by her voice. The fight wasn't done. Not yet. But for now, against the math of annihilation, Bravo was still breathing, and that was enough. The valley floor lay still, bodies scattered in broken lines where the charge had collapsed. Dust hung in the air, glowing in the hard light like smoke from a dying fire. Mercer's ears rang with silence that was heavier than noise. For the first time since the ambush began, there was no immediate push clawing at their throats. But quiet never meant safe. He steadied his breathing, eyes raking the cliffs. "Bravo, status check." One by one replies came. Wounded but functional, exhausted yet alive. Every man was accounted for. Then Katria Voss's voice slid onto the net, matter of fact, never hurried. Your perimeter is secure for the moment. Remaining hostiles are regrouping along the northern exit. If they slip out intact, they'll return with heavier assets. Next time, you won't walk out." The words sank like stone in Mercer's chest. Reinforcements with heavier weapons would erase everything they had fought for. He pressed his shoulder harder against limestone. "Options? Interdict the withdrawal," Katria answered. "If their command structure collapses before they escape, this fight ends here." Reed scanned through her glass, sweat streaking her face. "They're moving in clusters, peeling out in sequence." "Confirmed," Katria said. "Target the rearguard. Cut their tail and their body will stumble." Mercer's men had little left to give. Magazines were thin, grenades gone. They could bleed the retreat, but not stop it outright, which meant trusting the unseen rifle above once again. "Specter One," Mercer said, his voice iron. "This is your shot." No answer came, only the flat punctuation of her rifle. A runner at the rear folded mid-stride. Another crack followed, then another. The organized withdrawal buckled. Shouts broke down into discord, men tripping over comrades. Reed joined in, her careful fire cutting those who tried to rally. Davis clipped two scrambling for the saddle. Clay, working with his pistol now, harassed stragglers at the valley floor, but Katria's cadence never faltered. Each shot was deliberate, scalpel precise. Radios fell silent when their operators dropped. Leaders vanished mid-command. The retreat dissolved into fragments. Mercer felt the shift. The enemy that had once moved like a machine now staggered like loose parts. He keyed the net. "Bravo, hold lanes, let the mountain finish this." Minutes stretched, fire dwindled to random cracks. Survivors slithered into gullies, some tossing weapons as they ran, then even those faded. "Withdrawal broken," Katria said at last. Her voice carried no triumph, only finality. Mercer let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. He glanced down the line. His men were battered, bloody, bone-tired, but alive. Against the math of ambush, that was unthinkable. Harrison shook his head slowly. 12 of us against all that, and still here." "Don't thank luck," Reed said, eyes narrowing at the cliffs. "Thank her." Mercer followed her gaze, squinting. He saw nothing, no figure, no glint of glass, but he knew Katria Voss was still there, watching, waiting. He keyed the mic. "Specter One, we owe you our lives. Who are you?" Silence stretched long enough that Mercer thought she had already vanished. Then her reply came, softer than before. "Not your concern. Extraction is inbound. Until then, hold ground. I'll cover." The line went dead. Rotors came minutes later, faint tremors that grew into thunder. Helicopters descended hard into the valley, Apaches circling like hawks. Marines spilled out, rifles sweeping arcs across a battlefield already filled with silence. "Bravo, team!" a sergeant bellowed, running toward Mercer. "Perimeter secure. We'll take it from here." Mercer rose slowly, body aching as if every bullet they had survived weighed on his bones. He swept the cliffs one last time. Nothing. The ridges were blank, as though no one had ever been there. Reed muttered, "She's gone." Davis asked, "Was she ever here?" Mercer didn't answer. He faced the sergeant. "All accounted for. No Kia. Hostiles downrange. Count them yourself." The sergeant blinked, then nodded sharply. "Understood. Get your men on the birds." Bravo moved as one, though their bodies protested each step. They passed wrecked weapons, scorched stone, and twisted shapes of men who thought they owned the valley. Silence pressed heavier than the noise of battle. Harrison climbed aboard the helicopter and muttered, "Never thought I'd live to smell JP-8 again." Inside the roar of the cabin, Mercer allowed himself to sit. The seat felt foreign after hours of stone and dust. His lungs dragged in fuel-tainted air like it was salvation. Reed caught his eye. "You think Command will believe this?" "They'll believe what fits on paper," Mercer said. "The rest will be erased." "And Specter One?" His jaw tightened. She never existed, not officially. The helicopters rose, leaving Sentinel Valley behind. From above, the battlefield was nothing but rock and scars. No trace of the phantom who had turned a massacre into survival, but Mercer carried proof. In his pocket, a single brass casing he hadn't told anyone about, match grade. 338, etched by hand with words that cut deeper than steel. Fight so your brothers go home. He closed his fist around it. The edge bit into his palm, anchoring memory. Somewhere above the cliffs, unseen, Katria Voss had chosen to stand watch when no one else could. And though command would bury the truth in silence, Mercer knew what had saved them. Specter One, Katria, not a ghost, not a myth, a woman who fought in the shadows so 12 men could see another sunrise. Back at the forward operating base, the official report on the Caucasus incident was already being drafted. Mercer sat hunched in a cramped office, reading through pages that tasted like ash. Grid references, casualty counts, mission objectives. On paper, Bravo had stumbled into an ambush, held ground with textbook discipline, and extracted without fatalities. The file marked it as successful reconnaissance under fire. Nowhere did it mention the impossible angles. Nowhere did it acknowledge the calm female voice that had guided them through. Not one line about a sniper who seemed to see the battlefield clearer than satellites. Mercer flipped the last page, jaw clenched. His name appeared as the senior officer responsible for exceptional leadership under duress. Commendations were recommended. His men were praised for exemplary discipline. The document was hollow. It told nothing of the rifle cracks that had saved them when magazines ran dry, nothing of the drone that had fallen from the sky in a corkscrew of plastic, nothing of Katria Voss. He closed the folder and sat in silence. Bureaucracy always had omissions, but this was deliberate. Command had erased her. The whispers started almost immediately. Special operations circles are small. News traveled not through official channels, but in the language of rumor, in gyms, in dim bars, in the pauses before deployments. Guardian Valley, someone called it, a place where a SEAL team had been written off, only to emerge untouched. A place where a hidden sniper had turned the ambush inside out. The details varied. Some said it was a retired operator who never left the fight. Others swore it was a legend reborn, a name once erased from rosters. A few even whispered it was no man at all, but a ghost in the mountains. Mercer never corrected them. He never confirmed, never denied. He carried the casing etched with fight so your brothers go home. That was proof enough for him. Life moved on unevenly. Missions stacked. New deployments. War did not pause because one team had been pulled from the grave, but Sentinel Valley lived in them. It was in the way his men glanced at one another during quiet moments, in the gratitude they never voiced aloud. Harrison once asked on a long night, "Boss, you ever think about her? Wonder what she's doing now?" Mercer answered honestly, "Every day." Clay, cleaning his rifle nearby, grinned through grit. "If she saved us once, maybe she's saving someone else right now." The thought gave them comfort, though none expected to ever see her again. 10 months later, Mercer found himself stateside, speaking at an advanced operations symposium. The hall brimmed with uniforms and suits. He spoke of leadership under fire, of discipline when ammunition thinned, of refusing panic when terrain turned hostile. He did not mention Katria Voss. The audience applauded politely. Later, during the reception, Mercer stood near the back, glass of water in hand. Crowds never felt safe anymore. Chandeliers couldn't erase the memory of cliffs. That was when he noticed the older woman. She did not enter with flourish. Her presence drew no attention. But her gait was steady. Her shoulders carried invisible weight. weathered skin, hair streaked with grey, a plain suit pressed sharp. Mercer's breath caught. Her eyes found his across the room, calm, unshakable, familiar. She approached without hesitation. "Lieutenant Commander Mercer," she said. The cadence was unmistakable. Mercer froze, pulse hammering. "You were in the Caucasus," he said, "not a question." A faint smile touched her lips. Lines deepened around her eyes. "I might have been conducting independent operations in that region." Mercer's jaw tightened. "Specter One, Katria Voss," she did not confirm, but her silence was louder than admission. Around them, waiters passed with trays, conversations bubbled, yet the room narrowed until it was only the two of them. "I never had the chance to thank you," Mercer said quietly. "No thanks required," Katria replied. Her tone was polite, clipped. "You were doing your duty. I was doing mine." "What exactly was your duty?" Mercer pressed. She glanced past him, scanning exits out of habit, then back. "Ensuring men like you lived to go home." The words carried weight sharpened by years. Mercer wanted more, but she was already stepping away, weaving through the crowd with unhurried efficiency. "Wait!" Mercer called softly, but she did not turn. By the time he pushed through the knot of people, she had vanished. Hours later, back at his hotel, Mercer asked the front desk if any woman matching her description had checked in. The clerk shook his head. No registration, no badge, no trace. At the bar, the bartender slid a small wooden box across the counter. "Someone left this for you, said you'd understand." Mercer opened it. Inside lay a single challenge coin, heavy and cold in his palm. One side bore the seal trident. The reverse carried 12 engraved stars, 12 men who had walked out of Sentinel Valley alive. He clenched it, feeling the ridges press into his skin. The silence of the cliffs returned, not haunting but steadying. Katria Voss had vanished again, but she had left her mark. Over time, Specter One became parable. When recruits faltered in training, instructors told them, "Don't expect a Spectre to save you." When missions stretched too long, someone muttered, "Spectre's watching. Keep moving." The name became shorthand for unseen guardianship, for the belief that even when command failed, someone might still be out there. Mercer, older now, often visited the Wall of Fallen Seals. He ran his fingers over carved names, friends he would never hear laugh again. He would slip the coin from his pocket, feel the 12 stars and whisper a simple promise: "We made it home." Sometimes, when the wind shifted, he imagined hearing a rifle crack from far away, a reminder that some guardians never step into the light. The valley was filed away in silence, but to Bravo it would always be Sentinel Valley, a place where 12 men lived because Katria Voss had chosen to fight beside them. The official file on Sentinel Valley was fewer than 20 pages, dry, bloodless, stripped of everything that had truly happened. Reconnaissance under fire, no friendly fatalities. That was the line history would keep, but among the operators, whispers spread. They called it Guardian Valley, Sentinel Valley, a place where 12 men should have died, but walked out because someone unseen had stood watch. Details shifted with each retelling. Some swore it was a retired sniper still working shadows. Others whispered of a legend reborn, a codename erased years before. A few even said it was no human at all, only the ghost of a fallen warrior unwilling to rest. Mercer never corrected them. He never confirmed. He only carried the coin with 12 stars and the casing etched with "Fight so your brothers go home." Proof that Katria Voss had been real, if only for them. Life did not pause. Missions came, deployments stacked, rotations blurred together, yet Sentinel Valley clung to Bravo like a scar. Harrison asked one night, voice low in the dark of another fob, "Boss, you ever think she's out there, somewhere else?" Mercer didn't hesitate. "Every day." Clay grinned from the shadows, running a rag over his rifle. If she saved us once, maybe she's saving someone else right now. The thought brought a rare kind of peace. Even Davis, hardened skeptic, nodded slowly. Then, she's exactly where she belongs. Years passed. Reports filtered through the community, unofficial, half-believed, stories of units pinned down in nameless valleys, ambushes broken by unseen shots, drones falling from the sky with no explanation, retreats collapsing after commanders dropped mid-sentence. None of it ever reached paper, none of it carried attribution, but to men who had lived Sentinel Valley the pattern was unmistakable. Katria Voss still walked the ridges at the symposium where Mercer had last seen her. Her presence became its own rumor. Reed swore the description matched an instructor she'd once heard whispers about, someone buried in files no one could access. Davis believed it was deliberate, that she had wanted Mercer to recognize her but not claim her. Harrison shrugged. Doesn't matter. She was there when we needed her. Mercer agreed, though privately he replayed that night over and over. The calm eyes, the faint smile, the way she had vanished before questions could leave his mouth. The coin left behind, heavier than any medal. Instructors began to fold her into training folklore. When recruits hesitated on night shoots, a cadre snapped, "Think Specter One's going to hold your hand?" When exhaustion gnawed at long marches, someone muttered, "She's watching. Don't stop now." Her name became code for unseen guardianship, a warning and a promise. Mercer often visited the Wall of Fallen Seals. He traced names carved in stone, names of brothers he would never see again. Each time he slipped the coin from his pocket, felt the 12 stars and whispered, "We made it home." Sometimes he swore he could hear a distant crack echo across memory, not real, but not imagined either. A reminder that Katria's presence had never been about recognition. It had been about duty, the kind that left no records, no commendations. Sentinel Valley faded from maps filed under coordinates no one cared about. But in the marrow of the men who walked out, it would never fade, because they knew the truth. 12 men had lived because one woman had chosen to stand in the shadows, fighting with patience and precision until the storm broke. Her name would never sit in official archives, but in the whispered stories of warriors it carried more weight than any medal. Katria Voss, Specter One, the phantom who turned a massacre into survival. The Caucasus ambush would never exist in full-on paper. Official archives reduced it to a footnote, Grid Zone Unknown 7, reconnaissance under fire, no friendly fatalities. That was all the war machine allowed. Sterile, hollow, stripped of the weight carried by the men who lived it. But for Mercer and Bravo, the truth was etched into bone. It was in the way they shouldered rifles on new missions, in the way their eyes flicked to ridgelines even on calm patrols, in the way silence felt heavier than gunfire. Sentinel Valley wasn't a battle. It was a scar they carried together. On the first anniversary, they gathered in a quiet corner of a stateside base. No cameras, no uniforms pressed for ceremony, just brothers at a table with worn wood, a few bottles, and silence that belonged to them alone. Mercer placed a small coin on the table. 12 stars gleamed in dim yellow light. His voice was low, stripped of command. No one else will ever understand. But we do. We walked out together. Because someone chose to stand watch when she didn't have to. The men sat in silence. Harrison traced a finger across the coin. Clay shook his head, muttering, "Still don't know how we're breathing." Davis just stared into the dark, jaw clenched. Finally Reed spoke. Her voice was even, but her eyes shone. "Wherever she is, Katria knows we remember." Mercer closed his hand over the coin. The ridges pressed into his palm, biting flesh. "Then that's enough. The legend of Specter One never made headlines. It didn't need to." Katria Voss lived in the marrow of the men she saved, in the way they carried themselves afterward. When recruits groaned under the weight of packs, instructors snapped, "Specter's not carrying it for you." When missions stretched too long and fatigue threatened collapse, someone muttered, "Specter's watching, keep moving." When fire pinned men down in forgotten corners of the world, whispers rose that maybe, just maybe, she would appear again. Her name became code for unseen guardianship, a parable for sacrifice without recognition. Mercer grew older, his hair touched with grey, but Sentinel Valley stayed sharp. On his desk sat the brass casing he'd carried from the fight. Etched into its side were words carved by hand, "Fight so your brothers go home." Beside it lay the coin with 12 stars. Visitors asked about it sometimes. He always gave the same answer, a reminder. Late at night, when the base grew quiet, he would hold the casing and feel the ridges dig into his skin. He would close his eyes and still hear her voice across static, calm, precise, unwavering. "Bravo! Hold your ground. Let me work." He never saw her again. Not in halls filled with uniforms, not in crowded receptions. She had vanished like mist, leaving only proof too heavy to ignore. Yet from time to time reports crossed his desk. Unofficial. Whispers in after-action chatter, units pinned down in nameless valleys, ambushes broken by unseen shots, retreats collapsed when commanders fell to a single bullet, drones spiraling out of the sky. None of it reached official reports, but to Mercer, each account was a mirror of Sentinel Valley. He would read, smile faintly, and think, still out there. Years later, Bravo met again, this time in a quiet bar near the coast. Time had carved lines into their faces, but the bond had not thinned. They raised glasses without speeches, just silence that spoke more than words. Mercer set the coin on the table again. 12 stars gleamed. "Sentinel Valley," he said softly. Harrison nodded. Davis exhaled through his nose. Clay tapped the rim of his glass. Reed leaned forward, eyes steady. "No one else will ever know," Reed murmured, "but we will, and that's enough." The others echoed with silence, each man remembering the day they should have died, the day Katria Voss had chosen to make survival her mission. Mercer often visited the memorial wall. He traced the names of fallen brothers, men who had not been as lucky. He pressed the coin with 12 stars against the cold stone and whispered, "We made it home." Sometimes, when the wind shifted, he swore he could hear it, the echo of a rifle crack drifting across memory. Not real, not imagined, a reminder, because Katria had taught them something the official report never could. Heroes aren't always recognized, wars aren't always clean, survival is never guaranteed, and yet, even in the darkest places, someone can still choose to stand guard. To the world, she was rumor. To Bravo, she was the reason they lived. Katria Voss, Specter One, the phantom who had written her story not in headlines or medals, but in the breath of 12 men who walked out alive. Mercer held the casing one more time. He thought of her calm eyes, her quiet certainty, her words etched deeper than stone. He whispered, "The only easy day was yesterday." The motto fit her more than anyone he had ever known, and somewhere beyond maps and reports, he believed, Katria Voss still waited on some high ridge, chambering another round, standing the watch for men who didn't yet know they would need her. The dust of Sentinel Valley may have settled, but its story never will. 12 men were trapped in a kill zone that day, outnumbered, outgunned, and marked for death. They should have been erased by numbers and terrain. Yet 12 men walked out alive. They walked out not because of luck, not because of flawless planning. They lived because one woman chose to stand in the shadows and fight for them when no one else could. Her name was never meant to be remembered. Her voice was never meant to be heard beyond the crackle of a radio. But for those men she was everything. Katria Voss, Specter One, the phantom sniper who turned chaos into order, who gave her strength so they could keep breathing. Official reports will never tell her story. Command will never acknowledge her shots, her warnings, her presence. On paper she never existed, but in the hearts of Bravo, in the whispers carried across special operations units, she is immortal, because this story is not about medals or headlines. It is about sacrifice without recognition, courage without applause, and love for brothers in arms without condition. It is about what it means to choose watchfulness when no one is watching you. Think about that. 12 men were supposed to die. Instead, 12 came home. That is not just survival, it is a reminder of what duty looks like in its purest form, and maybe that is why this story matters so deeply. Because all of us, in our own lives, walk into valleys we never expected. We face ambushes of doubt, crossfires of loss, charges of overwhelming odds. And sometimes, when we are most surrounded, someone steps up unseen, someone holds the line, someone says, "Hold your ground, let me work." Maybe that someone is a friend, maybe a stranger, maybe it is us, standing guard for others. That is the legacy of Katria Voss. Not just that she saved 12 seals in a forgotten valley, but that she reminds us what it means to give without asking, to protect without demanding thanks. So tonight, when you leave this story, carry her lesson with you. Remember the unseen guardians in your own life, and ask yourself, when the valley comes, will you be the one who holds the watch? This is VeteranBiker. If the story of Specter One moved you, tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Share this video with someone who needs to remember that courage still exists in the shadows. And if you haven't yet, like this video, subscribe and ride with us. Because these stories deserve to live. Thank you for giving your time, your attention, and your respect to the memory of Sentinel Valley. Thank you for remembering Katria Voss. And thank you for riding with us, because legends like Specter One never die. They just find new ways to keep the watch.